Hi, Dave.
Yes.
Hi, welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Ann Chin. I'm one of the faculty members, and this year I have the honor of organizing the colloquium series. So we thank you very much for joining us. And thanks everybody for coming for another installment of our colloquium series. In a minute, Dr. Rafael Moreno will introduce our speaker and tell us a little bit more about him. And as you know, it's a topic about searching for spatial understanding of public service, and with 30 years of experience in local government. So yeah, why don't I let Dr. Moreno, Rafael, introduce him. But I do want to remind everyone again that after the talk, we are moving over to continue our conversations over a drink or something like that at the Tivoli. And we invite and welcome everyone. It's a chance for us to relax on a Friday afternoon and to debrief and visit each other. Right. Okay.
Thank you, Anne. So again, thank you, Anne, and thank you again for being here. It's going to be a very interesting presentation by Dave. Have the distinction to introduce him. He's a longtime friend. He's a very well-known figure in the area of local government in the state and nationwide. I mean, if you ask any GIS coordinator in the state of Colorado who's Dave Murray, he will tell you who he is. He has been around for many, many years. He has been the GIS coordinator in several cities. As I have asked him to give us a little bit of his background for the recording. But he has been the GIS coordinator in the cities of Thornton, Aurora, Denver, Westminster. He is a very, very big figure in the use of open source software in the context of counties and cities. So to the degree, let me tell you just quickly a story. Dave, some years back, more than once, he got a little bit frustrated with the Esri software. And he says, okay, I'm just going to go all open source. And Esri said, holy. What do you mean? What do you want? How can we help you? And boom, they send him the expert, whatever, and not cost, so that he can continue his operations. But that's just to give you an idea of the power of his voice, right? So that of his work is very, very important and very relevant. So we have been lucky to have him as adjunct faculty since forever. So he has been a very important figure in the Masters of Science in Environmental, Masters of Science in GIS, in Civil Engineering. And more recently, he has been working in the Department of Geography, teaching the open source software class. So I highly recommend you to take that class, take a look at it. It's very well structured and it covers what he sees is necessary out there. Also, he has hired through the years or worked with our students in his role of GIS coordinator. And I will ask him to tell us something about that. But that is a very, very, has been very beneficial for us and for our students, because, you know, if Dave sends a good recommendation, again, his voice is very powerful in the state of nationwide. So I encourage him to reach out to him and network and take advantage of his knowledge. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, he's close to retirement, but unfortunately for the rest of us, that's not that great. So hopefully he will, we've been talking about him continuing working with us even if he retires from the city of Westminster. So anyway, I don't want to take any more time. I just want to thank you again for being here. And I think you will enjoy Dave's presentation. Dave,
well, thank you, Rafael. Everybody can hear me just fine? Good. When Rafael mentioned that he would like me to give a presentation on my career in GIS, I said, well, you know, it's been a very interesting career. There's always something that piqued my interest, and you know, it was a career that continues on, but has many different twists and turns. And to start out with, I'd like to just give you something about a background about me. I grew up in Los Angeles. You know, I spent a lot of time on the beach and sand and surf and had a wonderful time, you know, in my childhood. I have an undergraduate degree from Northern Arizona University in mechanical engineering technology. Back in the 70s, you know, I thought that solar energy, renewable energy, energy efficiency would be the wave of the future. Well, you know, 40 years later, look at what's happening. I am so thankful that finally people have recognized that renewable energy and solar energy is really the way to go. You know, my career was going to be a solar engineer. You know, there's things that happen along the way that you have control over, and there's a lot of things you have no control over. Well, there really wasn't a market after I graduated in 1979 for solar energy. Yes, there was some here and there, but it was really difficult to find a position. So I came to Denver in 1980 and I made a totally different turn and I went into the oil business, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so, you know, when you're thinking about your career, look at your interests, look at the things that really excite you, and try not to give up on your dreams. But you know, you may be sidelined for a while, and that's fine. Or you may find a different passion that will just you know, will spark you even more. So when I came to Denver, after about 10 years, I got my master's degree in urban and regional planning. And then after that, a master's in GIS, both from UCD. So, you know, as I mentioned, I worked in the oil business, oil and gas business for 9 years. And this was as a landman, which means that I would go out to courthouses, I would research properties from patent to present, and then I would contact the landowners and see if they would want to lease their property for oil and gas. It was an interesting career, very itinerant, it fluctuated with the commodity market. So the thing is, I had a long family history in the business. My father and my grandfather had been in the business, so I thought it might be of interest. But I realized after a while that traveling around all over for endless weeks really got kind of old after a while. So after that, I went back and got my master's degree in urban and regional planning. I've worked with Thornton, Aurora, Denver, Westminster. I've also had the great opportunity of being a lecturer, of you know, being able to present to students, and I was going through all the list of students. I've had hundreds and hundreds of students since 1998, and all of them have been wonderful in their own ways, some outstanding. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I would encourage you, if you feel like that you have something to give, you have a perspective that students could benefit, please share with them. It's not only in academia, but there's many other ways to do that. So I got my GISP in 2007. That's the GIS professional certification. I have been a volunteer on a number of the GIS organizations in the area. And again, that is, I think it's very important. If you're looking to make a career in GIS, or, you know, try to, you know, I guess excel at certain areas that GIS requires, then, you know, having those contacts is so important. and the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association is always looking for volunteers. You will meet wonderful people, your colleagues, and I certainly would recommend looking into that, as well as the conference GIS in the Rockies, as well as GIS Colorado. GIS Colorado is a wonderful organization. It is centered on Colorado, and it has a great board and is always looking for new talent and new direction. So as mentioned, I have been working in GIS for 30 years, give or take. And to go back, I was able to find this Munger's oil and gas map book, an image of it from eBay. And you can take things, individual elements in your life that have meaning to you. And for me, this Munger's oil and gas book has a true meaning, because it was the first time when I was 12 years old that I actually recognized the value, the wonder, the importance, the magic that are maps. It was sitting on my father's station wagon seat, big bench seat, and I'd flip through it and just wonder that, oh my gosh, you can go anywhere with this thing. Look at all this info, look at what you could find out. And I was just enthralled by Munger's oil and gas map book. So, look to yourself, look to things where you find the magic that really sparks you. And then take a look and see if that's kind of the career path you want to take. But find that Munger's oil and gas book as your spark. And then, of course, back in those days, there were no Google Maps, there were no online maps. You had maps that were paper maps that folded up, and of course, you could never fold them back the exact same way, but they were just a wonder to behold. And as you went out across the country, you would have these maps with you. You would have atlas books, you would have individual maps. And so maps have really been a part of my psyche, as well as my living for quite a long time. But that being said, I mentioned something about the oil and gas business. I did spend a summer on oil and gas rigs, and it was quite a formative experience. I learned quite a bit about manual labor, about going to work and working 10 hours and just being dog tired. But the good thing is I still have my fingers. And when you're working on that rig and you're tripping a bit, which means you're pulling 9,000 feet of drill pipe out to put in a brand new bit and then put 9,000 feet of drill pipe back in the hole, it's a laborious physical experience, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. But then, as I mentioned, back in the 80s, Denver was the place to be. Denver was a booming hub. I had a background in oil to some extent. I had a family that helped enable me to understand how to get into the business. So I came to Denver, and within 2 weeks got a job, and I was up in Montana and North Dakota and Wyoming and all over there. But my job was to research ownership patent to present. So it was truly fascinating to be in a courthouse and to be able to research this piece of ground, this 160 acre quarter section, this 640 acres section, multiple sections, and see the complete chain of title of how it changed hands from the US government that would deed to someone that may have homesteaded it or may have actually purchased it outright. But usually it's a homestead kind of situation, but it was really, really interesting, and it gave me a solid grounding in land titles, as well as land descriptions, meets and bounds descriptions, understanding how land is put together. So I can't, you know, I can't fault my experience in the oil business, other than it really is a business that eventually will go away. And, you know, in the 2020s, you know, we are going to see the transition away from the oil business. But right now, I mean, we are still dependent on it. So that being said, what I'd like to say is, what do we do in local government? Let's make the transition to my career in local government and then my career in GIS. So what do we do in local government? What I like to think is we really do make a difference. We make a difference in people's lives. We are your neighbors, your customers, your visitors. We truly are as close to the daily lives of people as you can get. We turn on the water, we turn on the gas, the lights, all those things. So, you know, when I was thinking about my career in planning, and this was back in the formative days of GIS in the early 90s. I looked around and I saw that everything that we did in local government as a planner pretty much had a geographic basis. Yeah, there were some finance things and other things that may not have very specific location, but the vast majority of what we did, location was absolutely a priority to understand, as well as to be able to, you know, manage too that object, that asset. And so I posted this GIS Lounge, where the phrase 80% of data is geographic came from, and they debate that, but I know in local government it is well over 80%. It's probably closer to 90%. So I was a planner at the city of Thornton, and I was able to go to the 1991 URISA, Urban and Regional Information Systems Association GIS conference. And I still have this cup right here, this 1991 cup that I brought back from that conference. And back in those days, people were still trying to figure out what geographic information was, how they could use it. So there was a lot of discussion on feasibility studies, cost benefits, vendor assessments, specifications, system integration, all different kinds of things that, yes, we do now, but we do at a different level. Right then, it was all new territory. So I like this quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger. GIS is a form of digital mapping technology, kind of like Google Earth, but better. You know, Arnold, you nailed it. It is like Google Earth, but it is better. So let me give you some perspective and take you back based on 30 years of my experience. And again, you know, I like to put this disclaimer that finance companies put out: past performance is no guarantee of future results. But back in the formative age of GIS, basically, and I know this may shock you, there was no internet. You could not communicate other than your internal networks. So basically, you bought these heavy machines that were very, very expensive, and you use the UNIX system, which is you know, currently a variant is Linux. You know, Linux came from a lot of Unix kind of basis. So Unix was how you actually integrate and worked with GIS data. There was Windows 3X, which was, you really didn't have many GIS programs on Windows. Apple was only for graphics. And mobile was only for cops and real estate brokers. Looking back on it 30 years ago, it almost seems like the dark ages, but it was the formative age of GIS. So kind of like if you've ever studied the automobile industry, you had tens, if not hundreds, of different automobile companies back in the early 1900s to the 1920s. And then they all started filtering out, and now we have 3 or 4 or 5 in the world. But there were many vendors vying for your business. One of them was called Genesis, that had a program called GenaMap. And GenaMap was out of just right down the road from where I am right now in Fort Collins. And it was run by the great Dr. Carl Reed. Truly a wonderful gentleman. And it was, I think it may be around in some form or another. They had real linkages with Australia. Australia really is one of the pioneer countries in GIS. So there's a lot going on in Australia. I bring up Generation 5 because Generation 5 was a Westminster, Colorado company. And what they did is they integrated AutoDesk, AutoCAD with GIS. So it's kind of like putting an Excel spreadsheet on a AutoCAD DXF file and trying to do asset management from that standpoint. Then there was always Intergraph. Intergraph was the big boy, the monster machine. These were the machines. They had 2 big bug eyes. You'd spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy these machines, and you would digitize your utilities, all of your assets and utilities with Intergraph machines. MicroStation was for high-end CAD kind of design work, and a lot of this was based on an output, like a plotter output or a paper kind of output, not so much used across an organization. There was Atlas GIS, which Esri bought up and quickly dispatched, put away. MapInfo is still around. It's Pitney Bowes MapInfo, and there were others, but of course Esri has been in business since 1969. So they're the winner of the longevity of the great race for GIS. So, back in the day, 30 years ago, you opened up GIS, this is what you got. You got a command line. And it was, dumb as a fence post. It would do nothing unless you actually, wrestled with it and made sure that you put in the correct commands in the correct order to be able to actually use a GIS or do some kind of process. So here's an example. You would have to enter in all these commands over on the left just to be able to see and draw any one of these features. And then over on the right, to process, there's always been geoprocessing. So you could enter these commands to do geoprocessing. So building and cleaning and all kinds of stuff. And the amazing thing is we still have command line. It's only in Python now. And certainly, for any student that is interested in making a career in GIS, Python is absolutely a necessity. It is the tool of choice for managing and manipulating geographic data. And just last year, I went through a whole bunch of Python. I was kind of thrown off the bridge, saying we need to have these Python processes established, and we need to have this data in this format. So, it's one of those things, students, you really do need to think about this seriously, because it is a wonderful tool, and it's a skill that people really do value. People value this kind of skill. And I'll be honest with you, not everybody is ready to be able to write Python code or be a coder. And that's great. That's fine. We don't need a world full of coders, but we need people that can manage GIS data, manipulate GIS data, and work with GIS data. And Python is definitely one of the most efficient ways to do that. So, I mean, back in the day, the whole PC revolution came on board. UNIX, since it was so expensive and it was so specialized and didn't really communicate as well as, you know, a lot of other systems, they were mainly, you know, internal to an organization. GIS was then ported to a PC. And this is one of those programs that was not very well received and was not very good at all. It was horrible. It had a proprietary data set, PC ArcInfo. So that went off into the dustbin very quickly. And you know, anybody that used it probably didn't appreciate it at all. And then the revolution really did come with ArcView 3. The ArcView program was then a Windows program. You could use it on Unix, but most people used it on Windows, and it had its own proprietary code base. It was called Avenue, and it was an object-oriented code. And I learned Avenue to some extent, and that's what really sparked my interest in coding, and certainly object-oriented coding. Even though there is no such thing as Avenue anymore, I understand a lot more about how Python works, how C++ works, how other object-oriented programming languages works from learning how to use Avenue. So programs come and go. Vendors will sell you anything that they've been able to you know, put together and cobble together. But the key to success in this business is to have a clear understanding of what differentiates these different programs from each other and what makes them similar. And certainly having object-oriented programming is one of those. So back in the 90s, there was this whole dichotomy of real GIS versus casual GIS. You know, the web started to, you know, come online. There was, you know, by 1995, there were various different online map programs, and you had this group of people that had been trained in very specific kinds of GIS skills, now having to extend themselves, and including myself, which is pretty exciting. Esri comes out in the late 90s with this ArcGIS, this marriage of this ArcInfo program with this ArcView program into one Windows-based application. It was wildly successful after, you know, a few of the releases. Probably by version 9.3, it was pretty stable. But that's kind of the evolution. And now we have ArcGIS Pro, which is the next, you know, the next version of a desktop GIS. ArcGIS Pro is a you know, a fantastic program. They throw a lot of capabilities at it. Certainly, it is something that any GIS person or person working with maps should have some kind of background in. My problem with Pro is it is a heavy lift for most computers. And, you know, I have Pro installed on my my workstation and it works okay, but on my laptop, it is slow as heck. And it's related to how it works with data. I think they developed it using file geodatabases. They didn't use enterprise geodatabases, but we're still working through on tech support to try to figure out how to get some better performance on Pro. But you know, it certainly is the wave of the future, and certainly something to keep in mind. So, and as Raphael said, I instruct a free and open source for geospatial course. My go-to desktop program is QGIS. The great thing about this program is pretty much if you have any kind of a background in mapping, you can take to it very quickly. Start drilling down into it, it gets much more complicated. I mean, you can do just truly amazing things with it. So those are just some of the areas of GIS that I've worked in that I find interesting. But it really, and you know, what is not, I don't think, emphasized enough is the data component of GIS. Data is absolutely the central part of what we do in GIS. And back in the day, you could build your own GIS. As I said, there wasn't an internet. So either you would get things on tape or you would have to build your own. You could buy it. When I worked at Thornton, we actually bought the land based from Public Service Company of Colorado. It was a company prior to Excel, and they had actually digitized the block boundaries, or use what the government gives you. And this is how we did it. It looks pretty archaic. It is pretty archaic. It's not as accurate as one would think, but a lot of the data that you're actually using in GIS came to be from this sort of method of updating data. You'd register your paper map or your vellum map on a digitizing board. You would make sure that the tick marks, your registration marks, were the same on the screen as your digitizing board, and then you just go to town and start clicking away. And it was quite fun. You know, you'd use your Walkman and start digitizing. And I really like this this graphic. This is on one of my staff members' cube walls. When you digitize a whole subdivision, it ain't much, but it's honest work. And that's how I approach GIS. It truly, you know, sometimes you're in the ditches. I mean, meaning you are digging ditches with lines, polygons, points, and you know what you get out of it is what you put into it. And the thing is that I've recognized is when you're adding data to a system for an organization, that data is going to be around a long time. It may change somewhat, but the vast majority of it is going to be here long after we're gone. So, but nowadays there's data for everybody. Data is pretty much not the problem. The world's map is OpenStreetMap. The structure of that is different than a GIS structure, but the vast quantities of information that's available on OpenStreetMap is incredible. And the ability to just download, you know, whole swaths of the country at one time is truly incredible. So it's a much different world than when I started. The USGS has always had a lot of data out there, but they've really increased it quite a bit. I like the Colorado View data source. They bring a lot of the aerial imagery and elevation kinds of data. Natural Earth is a go-to for, you know, just standardizing tutorial data. You can go to Natural Earth, you can download the whole world, various different types of data from it, and certainly open data. Esri has a number of different sites. Colorado has its own information clearinghouse, and the Denver Regional Council of Governments. They have really stepped up in the last, about 20 years and become a data-centric organization and a service to the members. So I can't say enough about Dr. Koch. So part of what I do when I work with students is try to give them a sense of understanding the different types of data, because data comes in many different formats, and there are many different things you can use the data for. And probably one of the most important things that you have to remember is what you can't use the data for. I get requests all the time. Can you tell me where this intersection is? Or where this right-of-way line is, because I'm going to put a political sign in the right-of-way. And I tell them, no, I can't. And the reason I can't tell them where that line is because I manage a GIS. And what you do with a GIS is you put data together from different sources. And the key component is you have to make it all fit together. It's not like a surveyor that has one little parcel of land that all they need to do is locate those four corners and they're done. No, a GIS needs to put everything together in order so that it all fits together seamlessly. So you're going to have parts that are going to be stretched. You're going to have other parts of your data that are going to be moved. And what I always tell people is that it is a reference to be able to go find where the actual granting document is located. So that's just as a sideline. But as I show in this slide, I mean, you've got so many different types of data. ArcInfo coverages are pretty much obsolete. They've gone the way of the buggy whip. And they've turned into file geodatabases. You've got shape files that are still with us. They are a legacy from the 80s. They do not have intelligence with them. And hopefully someday they will go the way of the ArcInfo coverage, but they have been wildly popular. You have enterprise geodatabases, and these are geodatabases that are housed in an enterprise such as Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, those kind of things. Spatial Light is an open source based on SQLite, which is the world's most popular database. If you have a cell phone, you have a SQLite database in your cell phone. GeoPackage has not taken off to the same level that I was hoping it would, and replace the shapefile, because GeoPackages have a lot of the intelligence that is necessary to work with geographic information. You've got PostGIS, KML, you've got GeoJSON. As you start moving more into the web frameworks, you move away from the database kinds of structures and more into the XML text kind of structures. So there's just a few of the different types of data sources. And really, along with being familiar with Python, probably as important, if not more important, if you're going to make a career in GIS or even work with GIS, is you have to get familiar with the various different types of benefits and drawbacks of each one of these different formats, because they all have good things about them, and they have things that you may not work in your specific situation. So So when I look at GIS, I look at from a organizational standpoint, I look at different GIS eco regions. So you have the whole mobile world. Mobile is connected to the web, which means is connected to a database. And at some point, there was probably a desktop application that created the data that was put in the database that may be stored in the cloud. So when you're looking at GIS, it is so difficult to be an expert in any one of these things. To me, I have to manage the whole ecosystem. So what I do is I draw on different capabilities and strengths within an organization. And information technology are your best friends. They are the ones that enable you in GIS to do the amazing things that you do. So having those skills and having those resources available to you is absolutely critical. There are some organizations that there's one person that does all this stuff, and I don't know how they get it done. So a lot of it is based on how you approach the different capabilities and then the different vendors. So do you have one vendor that provides all of your information? Do you have many vendors that work together? Do you mix and match, or do you just start from scratch and build your own? The commercial ecosystem, what they want you to do, which is fine and well, and certainly, I've benefited from it immensely, but it is kind of like an all-inclusive resort. You get everything. You pay one price and you get all these capabilities. While the Phos4G ecosystem, it's like a bazaar or a parts bin or a collection of junk. It can be all of those things. And what it does, and why I find it so fascinating, is it really does make you think differently about how you approach problems that have a spatial component. And you don't just buy the vendor's version of it. You have to make decisions along the way. So it's kind of how I look at it. And I also look at, the whole ecosystem, the market, the GIS market. And you can buy all kinds of market reports out there. This one from Markets and Markets says that in 2025, the GIS systems market will be $14.5 billion by 2025. This market report says it'll be 12.2 billion in 2025. And then this one over here says 9 billion. So who are you to believe? Hopefully you're not going to believe the wise guy. I wouldn't pay $2,800 to buy a wise guy report. I just will not go there. So just to put it in perspective, I was looking at this ad, and the tequila market will surpass 14 billion in 2028. And then, how much is the pet industry worldwide? It's $200 billion every year, and the US has 47% market share. So it kind of puts it in perspective. What we do is very, very important, but you want to make money, go into pets. There's certainly a lot of money. So, I'm always looking for ways to figure out what is the best approach for providing the services to my customers. And so I'm always looking for ways to map out the landscape. So again, you've got Esri, which has a huge market share in the United States, not so much worldwide, but in the United States, they're definitely the leader. And then Quantum GIS is pretty much very closely behind them. But one thing I want to reiterate and make sure that everybody knows that while it only may be 14 billion. There is going to be an explosion of need for GIS services, data, and people that have an understanding of spatial data. And part of this is going to be related to the 2022 data. Don't know if anybody have heard about that, but the 2022 data is not going to be released until 2024, 2025. But it is going to cause a revolution in our industry and in the use of geospatial data, because it'll be so much more accurate. It'll be 4 times as accurate as our Colorado State Plane NAD 83 feet data that we currently use. And it'll be much more consistent in projections between different different reference systems. If you go to UTM versus State Plane, you know, you'll have a much better ability to get accurate results. And this is going to be absolutely critical as you think of all the kinds of spatial things that are coming down the road, literally down the road, such as automated automobiles, UAVs, driverless cars. You know, it really is a wave that is coming pretty soon. And the critical thing is we need talent. We need people that understand spatial data and understand the tools and the context of how to use spatial data. So I really like this quote from Brian Timoney. We can debate all day the pros and cons of making maps without a traditional background or cartographer. But the fact is, there has never been more diverse, a more diverse group of mappers going to the schools of GitHub and Stack Overflow, meaning that while having an education in GIS is absolutely critical, and that will give you a leg up or more credibility in many circles, there are a lot of people that are using geospatial data and they don't have a GIS background, or they don't even know what a projection is. They use Web Mercator auxiliary sphere all the time. So your skills are absolutely necessary, but there are a lot of people out there. I mean, you look at all these applications. Here's GovPilot. They're looking to integrate for organizations all of their geospatial data outside of the traditional GIS area. My Sidewalk, where can you find a transportation system that will, take you from the bus stop to, a rideshare area or to your home, those kind of things. There's all kinds of applications that are being developed that are outside of traditional GIS. There's a lot of changing market dynamics. Carto in the past was a big player in, being able to use maps and data across all different kinds of platforms. I haven't seen them, grow that much, though they could probably debate that. Mapbox is used everywhere. Mapbox is in your phone. They're everywhere. They are a development platform. And certainly I would recommend that you could get one of their free Mapbox logins. It's a great system. It is just a little bit different than your traditional GIS, and which is good, which is really good for everybody. You've got companies like Mappiness. They're posting, how happiness affects their local environment. If you're interested in where you live and how how your neighbors are feeling about your environment, Mappiness is your is your source. So, as I always say, geo equals happiness. One provider that we use in our class that is really I think taken off quite a bit is GIS Cloud. I like it because it is more GIS-y, meaning you've got layers and symbols and all that kind of stuff, and it uses all your standard kind of data sets. So GIS Cloud is pretty interesting. So, what I always ask myself, what is my biggest challenge this year? And part of that is integration of all these systems and making sure that the GIS can serve all of our customers. And it is a truly diverse customer base. And this is what truly, scares me to death, is that Mark Andreessen, in 20 years, every physical item will have a chip implanted in it. Well, I don't know if that's truly the case, but a lot more are going to have both chips and location associated with it. And somebody has to manage all this stuff. Drone data and UAVs are pretty much ubiquitous everywhere. You collect data, you process imaging, and then you upload to the cloud. Having an eye on the kinds of environmental issues that we run into from day to day is definitely really important. And certainly having the right staff. I don't know about pet delivery or dog delivery, but drones are going to be everywhere. And as I think about it, really is entrenched thinking the biggest challenge to GIS. What I do in my class is I hopefully give the students the ability to be able to broaden their horizons in terms of how they approach both the environment as well as how they model and use geographic information outside of a very rigid sort of set of constraints that a lot of times vendors, want you to put in place. So in 2021, there are so many opportunities, and in going into 2022, even more integration into business intelligence. One thing I would say is get a solid grounding in statistics, but also spatial statistics. Spatial statistics are different from standard statistics because location has an influence on values that you're studying. So there are a lot of new players. Old players sometimes go away. They don't have the market breadth to be able to withstand some of the headwinds. Mobile will be everywhere. The changing of various different entrenched vendors, rise of corporate and commercial GIS jobs. You see this all across the board. Don't just think of local government. Location is everywhere. People want to know about location, and they want to integrate with their different types of data. So, I do use Esri. They have been very good to my career. They have 40% of the market share, which some people say, but in local government, it's 100%. I don't know anybody of my colleagues that don't use Esri, and which leaves out the vast majority of organizations. I live in a community that doesn't have a GIS. And why? Because it's really expensive. You have to have both the budgets as well as the staff to keep that going. And what I'm up against is that there are third-party apps that are many times more expensive, meaning both cost of acquisition and maintenance costs than the standard GIS. And these include public safety, financial systems, asset management, process management, regulatory, that do require an Esri license. You cannot buy these systems without an Esri license. So, I mean, for Esri, that's great. For people that have learned Esri, that's great. For the industry, I don't think that's good. I think I mean, every time I see that there's a new vendor that some department has purchased that requires an Esri license, I go, well, okay, you know, we've got Esri licenses and we can provide it. But that's just the world we live in. It is truly interesting to see that a company owned by two people, Jack Dangerman and his wife Laura, control so much of what we do in GIS. It's just mind-boggling. But that's the situation that we run into. And I don't know if you saw this commercial on the television, and I asked my staff, boy, did you see this Esri commercial? And it was on the TV the other night. It was on CNN, and it was on the nightly business report, and it was all over. And their response was, what's a TV? So that was just my reaction. What they're trying to do is expand their business for data intelligence. And, you know, I haven't seen their commercials, you know, in a year and a half. So I don't know if it took off or not, but I mean, they spent a ton of money on see what others can't commercials. So for me, you know, it's just another upgrade. We've got another one coming up in December. We're hamstrung, meaning you cannot upgrade your GIS. Your GIS is not your GIS anymore. It is the third-party vendor's GIS. You cannot upgrade, you can't move a muscle without those third-party applications that are tied to business processes, that are tied to revenue dollars. You can't do that. You can't, you know, upgrade without their approval, meaning that they need to be certified. And a lot of vendors, you know, there is no money in being certified for the next version. For a GIS, we have to manage the entire organization's capabilities. And so we're held back, you know, several versions back because we have one vendor that cannot upgrade their system to take advantage of these new environments. So, I mean, it's just, you know, the environment we work in. We would all like to be as progressive as possible and have the latest capabilities, but you know, when you get to the level of managing a GIS in an organization, you can create silos and you can create various different development areas. But across the board, if you're not providing the GIS data to your customers, they're going to find somebody else that will. So, but the good thing is there's a lot of integration going on. AUTODESK and GIS, Esri are working much closer together. Before they were competitors. Now they're you know, providing capabilities across both their platforms, building information models. And this is kind of that interesting area between GIS and architecture. Someday those will truly merge and integrate, but right now they're still kind of separate worlds, the AutoCAD and the GIS world based on scale. I'm interested in this new concept called a digital twin. That term has been thrown out quite a bit, and I don't totally understand it. I think it's like a building information model, but people are raising a ton of money. I mean, millions and millions of dollars on digital twins. City Zenith is one of these companies. And I still don't have a clear understanding, so I'm scheduling a meeting with them. Me and the GIS, there is a much more interest in building information. So does the GIS then take over building information? Who else would actually manage that? And certainly for public safety, going into schools, those kind of things, they need to have the best information available. And also what you're seeing is every one of these analytic platforms, Palantir, Tableau, they all have some kind of mapping component. Now, that goes back to, is it their proprietary system? How is that developed? Who are they using? Are they using a Google map? Are they using an Apple map? Some other map? But they all have some kind of spatial modeling and GIS tool. And then there's the citizen involvement, which is so exciting. So getting people involved in their community and getting people involved with GIS and technology, I think will benefit all of us. So participatory mapping, the public's asked to track Colorado wildlife. This was recently out of The Economist's. Soldiers now have complete LiDAR units on their helmets, as well as radar, as well as other kinds of motion sensors. Everybody is a sensor these days. And then there's Tesla. I saw this from Zimlon. What data does Tesla collect from customers? Of course, it collects your contacts, your browsing history, your navigation history, radio listening frequency, current location of the vehicle, and the charging station used by the users. So there is location. And at one of the FOSS4G conferences a few years back, Tesla was looking for one of their GIS autopilot person. I thought that was a pretty interesting position. So this comes from Cardo's CEO, Javier de la Torre, a couple of years back. And I truly believe this is that one component of being spatially literate is to be able to analyze data, to understand the different types of kriging and inverse distance weighting and all the different kinds of statistical methods that we teach here at UC Denver. And I think it's absolutely critical that more of that is incorporated, because it's no longer just a niche anymore. It will become part of how value is generated to organizations from geospatial data. Because again, there is so much geospatial data. It is everywhere. It's being collected everywhere. So what our students and what our faculty do is they make sense of that data. And that is really important. So I would certainly recommend that you take a look at this one. So my advice to students is, if you're looking for a position in local government, really you need to ask yourself, do you want to serve the public? When you get a job with local government, every day I think of the people I serve. Some I like, some I don't, but they are my constituents, meaning I have an obligation to provide the very best services and data for them to be able to, meet their needs. The other thing is, don't become proficient become proficient in technology, but not wedded to it. As you can see from my background, there's many different technologies. A lot of them have gone by the wayside. I do not use them, but I learned from every one of them. And it's vitally important that you grasp on to those key components of each one of those interfaces and projects that you use that can be, translated into something that's new that's coming down the road. Be always curious, ask why all the time. Ask why you have this vendor, ask why this data is this way. If you're curious and you get answers, then you will always be moving ahead and improving. Be empathetic with technology users. This stuff is hard. As you can see, going from a database that is stored on various different nodes in an enterprise SQL Server cluster to actually a map that people use on the screen to get information to be able to do their job is difficult. But try to understand their problem from their side. Know yourself. Are you a problem solver or an influencer? Early in my career, I recognized that technology is core to what I do, but I didn't always want to be stuck in technology. What I wanted to do was influence organizations. I want to improve organizations. So there is that human interaction. It's up to you to understand, do you want to be only technology bound, meaning focused on technology problems, or do you want to work with people, develop skills that will help them understand their business problems? Because a lot of what we do is we help people understand their problems and then translate what their problems are into some kind of product, web map, output, data set that they can use. And so, a lot of it goes back to being empathetic and just being curious and working with people. And career gains can take time. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's been times when in my career that I've struggled and thought, well, maybe this isn't the road to go. And I hung on. I was patient. The right opportunity came up, and I was able to take advantage of it. So those are the kind of things that I would recommend people. If you're looking for a job, I mean, job anywhere, but certainly in local government, because it can be quite a struggle. But so I mean, I look at this quote in 1542. If you wanted a map of the New World, you'd pay 2 years' wages and wait 1 year's time. And you look at this map of 1689. Well, it's probably is definitely a work of art. But we are generating the kinds of maps that really, really, again, make a difference in people's lives. And as I say to a lot of people, what a long, strange trip it's been. This is a poster from the Grateful Dead, 50 years, but they were looking to 75 years. They were looking to 2040. And that's the kind of thing that we always need to do, is be proactive and look to the future with open eyes and a sense of wonderment, because it really is pretty amazing. So I've got to say that I certainly didn't make it through my career on my own. There are many, 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 many people that have helped me along the way. And one of these is Greg Bryant. Greg Bryant was an instructor in civil engineering at UCD. He was also at Denver Water for a number of years. Truly a mentor to me, a beautiful, wonderful person, someone that I could always talk to. And we lost him a few years back, but he will always be in my heart. And Dr. Lynn Johnson. Dr. Lynn Johnson started the GIS program at UCD in civil engineering. I took classes from him in the 90s. I worked with him as an instructor in civil engineering. And he was always supportive of me. And again, here's another individual who was always looking to the future. What are we doing? I mean, in the early 2000s, we had our programs online with Dr. Lynn Johnson, you know, all across the globe. So again, with that, I am going to get out of here. I'm going to go off, have my Friday afternoon club. And with that, I will take any questions you have or comments, thoughts, criticisms. Please let me know.
Thanks so much, Dave, for that wonderful presentation. It must have been amazing to kind of review and think through 30 years of work in a career and to share it with us. That was very special. So we will take a few questions or have a brief discussion with Dave while we have them. And we so wish that you could be here so that we can walk over to the Tivoli together and to continue discussion. But we can start here.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just wondering if you think it's possible for a local government to kind of decouple their software from a big giant like Esri and maybe transition completely to open source or like proprietary software. And is there incentive to do that? Would there be safety concerns? I just imagine for some governments, they need every penny they can get. And so open source software would be better than nothing. I hear if that's possible.
Yes, it is possible given the right vendors. And as I mentioned, the vendors that we buy products from for our asset management, our utilities asset management program, for our building permit systems, for our public safety systems, they will not accept anything other than an Esri product. So if you don't have an Esri product, they're going to charge you, and they're going to charge you staff time to manage that Esri product. So again, it's just the environment that we're in. Smaller organizations that have not integrated all these different systems into one, unified product may be able to get away. I mean, because really, when you're looking at it, it's just a database. It is database tables, and then it is web services. So if those two elements, if you can make sure that those open source elements are compatible with whatever systems they have, yes, you can. But like in my situation and other people's situations, the vendors have totally bought into the Esri product world. And they require a Esri Python process. They require, map services are a little bit more generic, not absolutely, but they also require desktop Esri programs to be able to generate their services that they use in their system. So it's just, it's wonderful for Esri. I mean, I marvel at how they've been able to capture so many different elements of the GIS world. But from an industry standpoint, it's not good. And Jack is 77, his wife is 75, something like that. What happens when he goes? I mean, I ask everybody that I have contacts with Esri. They have no idea, Who knows is it going to be a public company? Is it going to be an employee-owned company? Is he going to give it to somebody? Who knows? So we're all doing his bidding, but we have no idea where we're going. Sorry, that's just my editorial comment.
I mean, just want to follow up on that one, because actually you stole my question. I was gonna ask you that. But just to continue, that is okay, you mentioned it's hard to jump from the proprietary closed systems onto open source software. But what is the level of counties and cities embracing open data?
Open data.
Yeah.
That has exploded. One of the worst offenders was Jefferson County, Colorado, for many years, up until probably 2016. You would have to spend $20,000 to $30,000 to get their GIS data. Now it's all open, parcels, addresses, everything. And what they recognized, and what my organization recognized, is they weren't making any money on this data. Data is not so much valuable as the data usage and the ability to be able to generate the products. The results from the data is much more valuable than the actual data.
Well, initially, Dave, I was going to ask, but I think you already said we don't know where we're going. But initially, I was wondering, you know, you wrote us back to 30 years ago. I was wondering if you could have given us a glimpse into 30 years later. What it'd be like?
30 years from now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, you're going to need a lot of people to be able to manage all these systems. I mean, you look back to Mark Andreessen, everything in 20 years is going to have a chip in it. And the vast majority of those are going to have some kind of location associated with it. So the ability to be able to work with location data on vast numbers is going to be really important. You know, certainly 30 years from now, autonomous transportation will, I don't know, I mean, maybe 50%. So what and I ask our transportation engineers all the time, why aren't we putting things in the street that will help autonomous vehicles? I mean, paint the stripes with electronic, reflectance or something that will help automated vehicles. But you're going to have a huge explosion of automated vehicles. To be able to manage all of your systems in one interface, meaning everything's going to be electric. You're going to have solar panels and just to be able to manage all the different kinds of devices. It's going to be pretty exciting. I am very optimistic about the future in terms of geospatial. And you're going to see a lot more different kinds of applications crop up. So.
Great. With that, it's great that you won't have to deal with it. In the hands
Thank
of
you.
all these guys here, right? Yeah, sounds good. Well, so with that, let us thank you again for your time on a Friday afternoon, and also for giving us this very well-prepared and wonderful presentation. Again, yeah, please join me in thanking Dave and for this presentation. We hope, though, that this won't be the last time, and we will continue our long association with you in your retirement. Thanks again.
Thank you.